Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Daniel Midson-Short back with another episode of Self Improvement Saturday. Hello, my friends on Instagram. Hello, my friends on YouTube. It is good to be here with you once again. The weather is getting frosty. I've got a nice cup of coffee, and this is, as I hit my microphone, this is episode number 17 of Self Improvement Saturday. Quite exciting. We're getting close to 20 episodes, my friends. Who knew it would go this far? Didn't expect myself to be this consistent, but hey, when you love it, it's a lot easier to do. Today, my friends, we are going to talk about an interesting topic. The topic I have in mind today is one that I've been thinking about for who knows how many years. I've done a TED talk around a topic similar to this. I've done keynote speeches around this topic in the past. There's a lot of different ways that I've addressed this. The topic we're going to talk about today is how the internet makes you feel like a failure in life. And you might be thinking, what the hell does that have to do with self-improvement, personal development? Well, I want to show you some ways that you can actually use the internet effectively that will make you feel better about yourself. But it's also important to be aware how it might be affecting us negatively and making us feel like we're behind in life or that we're a failure in some way. It's something that seeps into our lives slowly. We don't tend to start off using social media or the internet thinking that it's going to disempower us or make us feel worse about ourselves. But the reality is it starts to happen very subtly, and it starts to become part of just the way we think and feel about ourselves, which is not a good thing, I personally believe. So we're going to talk about different ways that social media makes us feel like a failure, and the internet in general can make us feel like a failure or feel like we're behind in life. And we're going to look at some ways that we can actually use it for good. We can make it ourselves feel better about ourselves. So let's get into it. As you all know, the internet has been around since about 1997, I think it was. Actually, 1993 was when it started. Officially, I think, was when the base internet started, but 1997, 1998, 1999 were the years when people started to use it more. And then the social media era really kicked off in the early 2000s. Facebook was introduced in 2004, and then Instagram in 2010, and in between there was Twitter and Friendster and MySpace and all those different ones that we're all part of over the years. But slowly and surreptitiously, social media became part of our lives. It's just a reality of what we live with today. It's how we connect with people. It's how we perceive what's happening in the world for a lot of us. And it's just part of who we are as people for many of us. Some of us don't use it at all. Some of us use it all the time. And it just really depends on your personal preferences and what you're interested in. But I do believe that overuse of it or use of it in the wrong way has crept into our lives and has become a negative or detrimental thing. And so let's talk about some of the ways that social media and the internet can make us feel like we're behind in life or we're a failure in life. So there's three things that I have noticed that tend to cause this sensation of, wow, I'm really behind other people or I'm a bit of a failure in life when you use the internet and social media. The first one is because we fall victim to what is called the human highlight reel. And you've probably heard this term mentioned in different ways on different platforms, but it's essentially the impetus that we all have to show our best self or our highlights of our lives on social media. Whenever something good happens to us, whenever we succeed, whenever we have a peak experience, whether it's a vacation or a relationship announcement or maybe a job promotion, or there's something that happens in our lives, we feel the urge to immediately share it with our social media family and followers, the people that we know through social media. And we do this because we get recognition, we get congratulations, we get status, and it makes us feel good about what happened in our lives. And it's a way to kind of record it and also share it with a broader group of people. You could call every single one of the people you know on the phone and tell them the good news. You could text them all, but it's much easier just to send out a blanket Facebook or Instagram or Twitter announcement, say, hey, good news, everybody. This happened to me and I'm awesome. And that way you get a little bit of status, you get a bit of self-esteem, you get a boost in some way. Because we all do this and we keep perpetuating this habit, it creates what we call the human highlight reel, where if you look at your Instagram feed, and you look at your own page, you'll probably find that the majority of the posts you have on there tend to be positive. They tend to be epic moments in your life when you're traveling or something exciting's happening. There's not a lot of everyday things happening on social media. Sure, more and more with stories and things like that, we're getting more everyday kind of minutia, but generally speaking, we curate our social media to look like a bit of a highlight reel. And I think this is good in one respect because it makes us look back and go, wow, I can be so grateful for all the amazing things that happened. But on the downside, we also only see the positive parts of what everyone else is doing. And therefore, we can tend to reflect on our situation and compare ourselves unfavorably to a lot of people around us. So, that human highlight reel aspect is something that's real, and it is a factor that we all deal with, and we all perpetuate it by doing it more. Now, I'm not saying that the answer here is to necessarily start spilling out negativity and showing people when your life's failing online, but I think there should be a little bit more of a balance of authenticity and reality sometimes in the content that we share, me as well as anybody else, and share those things with people so that they can see, hey, maybe life's a little bit more moderate than we're making out. It's not so perfect for everybody else. The human highlight reel is a bit of a trap. It's something that we all do, and we all fall into the idealization of other people's lives and thinking that, oh, wow, my life isn't as good as everyone else's. That's the first thing. The second thing that we all fall into, which I notice a lot, is what I call subtle status games. And this is where we say things like, I'm doing great, or look at my promotion, or, in some way I raised my status. I'm in a new relationship. I'm so happy. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And we, even you see people doing it about their kids. Oh, little Johnny's got accepted to this, school, or he's doing so well in his soccer team, or, I'm so proud of this person in my life, whatever. We try to find ways to boost and to have subtle status increases in our lives. This links to the human highlight reel, but I think we do it more than we realize. We look for that status boost from other people. We're definitely sharing it because we want to get acknowledgement and recognition, but we also want to remind other people, hey, I'm making the right decisions in life. I'm doing things that are worthwhile. I'm an important person. What I'm saying is valid. These little subtle status games that we play where we position ourselves as knowing what we're doing and living the right kind of life, these are things that can tend to wear on us if we're not careful, because we start to live our lives trying to get extrinsic rewards and finding ways to display our status. We're constantly looking for another element where we can put our status up front. So, you see this a lot in people who go out to dinner and they have their food there, and before they eat it, they take a photo of it. Seems ridiculous and we all laugh at it, but we're doing it because it's a status thing. It's showing people, hey, I'm having a good time here. Or if you're on holidays, you see all the people, instead of enjoying the moment and the environment they're in, they're taking selfies of themselves in front of famous monuments or whatever. Some of them don't even spend time looking at the monument. They just look at the photo of themselves in front of the monument. That's because it's a subtle status display. It's a way to kind of say, look where I am, look what I'm doing. I'm living a great life. So this idea is always there, and it is linked to that idea of the human highlight reel, that we're subtly displaying our status and we're looking for recognition of our status from other people at the same time. It's a little bit sinister and we wouldn't admit that we're doing it, but that is actually what's happening under the surface. The problem comes in is when we perceive that other people's status is somehow higher than ours, and we are somehow in the one down position. So, if someone gets married and they have kids and they appear to have a great relationship and they're displaying that status online, and we don't have that, or say we've just broken up or we got divorced or something's not going well in our lives, we don't have children, we really want to, then our status is going to be lower than theirs, and it's going to make us feel worse. And that's a subtle status game. No one is saying anything directly about this. No one's saying I'm better than you or you're better than me, but we all believe it and we all perceive it in the way we display ourselves. This is really a common thing that we don't really talk about, but it's always there. It's there in our personal lives, in our work lives, and in society in general, are these subtle status games that we all play. And the internet and social media just kind of make it much larger than it would be if it was just in our regular communities. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, which I've kind of alluded to, is what I call the comparison trap. And this is something that really we just all do naturally. We look at other people to try and figure out whether we're doing well in life, whether we're doing the right things, making the right choices, etc. And we're always kind of comparing ourselves in some way. The issue is that generally speaking, we compare ourselves unfavorably to other people. We don't do a good job in terms of looking at our life and going, hey, I'm doing great, and so is everybody else. We go, everybody else is doing well, and I haven't figured things out. We have the internal version of our lives with all the emotions and the past baggage. We carry that with us. We don't see that in other people. We don't understand what they're going through and what struggles they've had, especially if they're not displaying them online. And therefore, it's very easy to compare our whole life story and all our emotions and everything we're feeling with what we're seeing of them, what they're displaying online, the very base, simple level of what we're seeing. And we tend to compare ourselves unfavorably. This isn't a new thing, by the way. It isn't something just to do with the internet and social media. This has been around a long, long time. And there's a famous book in the self-help world called Psycho-Cybernetics. Can see here by Maxwell Maltz, who is actually a plastic surgeon who wrote a self-help book because he realized so many people were comparing themselves unfavorably and not feeling good about themselves. And that was the real reason they were coming in for cosmetic surgery. So he wrote this very interesting book a long time ago. And I want to read you just one little paragraph, which really demonstrates what I'm talking about here with the comparison trap. So he says, as this feeling of let me start over. As this feeling of inferiority comes about for just one reason, we judge ourselves and measure ourselves not against our own norm or par, but against some other's individual's norm. When we do this, we always, without exception, come out second best. We think and we believe and we assume that we should measure up to some other person's norm, and we feel miserable about it. We feel second rate and conclude that there is something wrong with us. If you can relate to that, that's because you're probably falling into the comparison trap. And by the way, I'd really recommend if you do to check out Psycho-Cybernetics. It's an old school classic, really helpful in terms of self-image building and getting out of this tendency to beat yourself up because you're not measuring up to other people. And what he's essentially saying there is that we will always see other people's norm or level as somehow better than ours just because we perceive them in a certain way that's more heightened or more glamorous or whatever. And especially with social media and the internet, it's extremely easy to do that these days. So these three ideas, the human highlight reel, subtle status games, and then the comparison trap, I believe all of those three are really things that get in the way of us being able to see people objectively and to see ourselves as equal or fairly close to everyone else in the world. We tend to judge ourselves more harshly and we look at everyone else as having these great lives. The other thing that's a big part of this is the extreme variety and infinite options that are available online. So if you choose to live in a certain place, a certain home or a certain environment or something like that, there are infinite different options today that you could choose instead. You could choose to live in a different city or a different type of house or a different country or whatever. And all these options are now available to you because of the visibility of the internet. It wasn't like this 50 years ago. You just lived where you live because that's where you lived and you didn't think about it otherwise. But now you can go on Zillow and you can look at hundreds of thousands of different options and you can think, well, maybe I should live here instead of here. It's the same with how you dress. It's the same with the products you buy. It's the same with the car you drive, whatever. We have unlimited options today. And because of the proliferation of information on the internet, we end up constantly thinking, well, maybe I should have this instead of this. Maybe this wasn't the right choice. It's very hard to enjoy what we have when there's always billions of other options. There's another famous book called The Paradox of Choice, which I think it's Barry Schwartz, who's the author of that. He talks about that when we have too many options, it actually makes us feel less certain and less happy about what we have because we're kind of overwhelmed by the choices we have. Whereas if we only have one or two options in our lives, we tend to enjoy them more and value them much more. So this is another thing. And if you want to experience this, all you have to do is to go on Amazon. For example, let's say you're looking for a book and you can look at the book that you're thinking of buying, and then you'll realize that there's 17 other book options that are similar to that one that you could read instead. And you might think, well, maybe I should buy 3 of them. Maybe I should buy all of them. I don't know. And it tends to overwhelm you and it makes you feel very uncertain about what you're doing. It's extremely hard to make definite decisions in the internet age because we have this infinite choice and an abundance of options. It should be a good thing, but it actually creates this uncertainty in us, which can then it can cause us to deride our own confidence in ourselves. So these are the things that I would say we really need to be aware of. and why they may make us feel like a failure in life. There is a tendency to glamorize people who have a lot of success, whether it's wealth or fame or status or whatever, in our world as well. The media loves, sort of success stories, especially early success, young people who make it or people who triumph over great odds, but they don't show the reality of what happens to those people for many years before that, the struggle, the sacrifice. You don't see any of that. You only see the results. So that causes us to feel a little bit like, well, I'm not as far ahead as that person, or I'm not in the same league as that person, or whatever. And we beat ourselves up for that reason as well. So, how do we overcome this? What's the solution to the internet making us feeling like a failure or feeling like we're behind in life? Well, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is that I believe we have to lean more into real life. Now, I'm as guilty of this as anyone else right now. I'm talking to you through the internet, so I get it that this isn't real life. But very often, if you can spend more time in real life with real people, whether it's spending time socializing or getting involved in activities, whatever it is, there's ways that you can connect with and spend more time with people. You'll get a more realistic perspective of the people around you. You'll get a feel for who they are, and they'll share more things with you that are genuine and honest. And you'll find that you'll get more of a reality check that makes you feel like, wow, I'm doing okay. I'm actually on the same level as this person. You find this if you ever get to meet someone who you admire, maybe it's a celebrity or a mentor or something like that, and you spend a bit of time with them in the real world, you start to realize, oh, this is just a normal person. Whereas if you just follow them online, you kind of glamorize who they are. So spending more time in real life with people who you want to be like, or people who you value their opinion or whatever, that helps you to raise your self-esteem, and it helps to eradicate this kind of human highlight reel element. Because in the real world, you can't kind of highlight everything. You can't hide your downsides. You're a real person. So that's the first thing, is lean into real life wherever you can and spend time with people one-to-one or in the real world, and you'll find that it actually slows this down. The second that I've noticed that works really well is to look online for places where there's more of a reality check. And a couple of sites that I found really helped me with this is Reddit and Quora. They're two excellent sites where people talk more openly and honestly about the reality of everything. You can ask questions, you can join different interest groups, and there's a lot more discussion about the reality of what's happening in the world and how things really are and what we're feeling and thinking underneath, versus social media, which tends to propagate and only promote the highlight reel or the best parts of the world. Now, there are a lot of rabbit holes you can go down on these websites as well, and I'm not saying they're perfect by any means, but I have noticed if I want to do more of a deep dive, say into psychology or self-improvement or some sort of business thing or an interest I have, whatever it is, if I go onto those forums like Quora or Reddit or different places like that, even there's a lot of Discords and things like that today, you're going to have more real interactions with people who are more genuine, who are dealing with the same thing. Recently, I've been looking into doing some videos about the reality of going bald, because that's something I had to deal with. And there is an incredible community of fellow men who are dealing with the same thing on Reddit. There's the subreddit called Bald, and you go on there and everyone's struggling with the same thing. And it made me feel incredibly more comfortable about the fact that, hey, I don't have any hair. I'm dealing with this, and a lot of other people are as well. So the online forums are definitely another way for you to, if you pick the right ones, to feel more of a reality check and not feel like such a failure in your life or like you're behind everybody else, because you realize there's a lot of other people who are dealing with exactly the same thing, and they can support you and encourage you through it. So that's the second way, is to seek out more reality-based online platforms and forums that will help you to get a better perspective. And the third thing I would say that can really help you is to consider why you value something. So this is a little bit of a deeper discussion, and maybe we'll do this as a whole nother episode in the future. But the idea is, very often when we are beating ourselves up or we're comparing ourselves unfavorably compared to other people, it's because we're putting a lot of value into a particular way of being or living or thinking. And you have to challenge that at times. So a good example of this is financial success. Let's say you have someone in your life who you think is really financially successful. They seem to have a nice home, or they have, appear to have a lot of money, or whatever it is. Why do you value that so much? Why do you think what they have is so great? What makes it so great in your mind? Where did that idea of valuing that start to appear in your life, and why have you leaned into it so much? Or maybe it's the idea of having a relationship and being married and having children. Okay, so you don't have that yet, but you really want it. And you look at all the other people who have it and you think, oh, I'm not as good as them. I don't have it yet in my life. Why? Why do you value that personally for yourself? Generally, when you look at these things, it's because you actually want to feel better about yourself. Your self worth is somehow linked to these external factors, whether it is financial success, a relationship, status, whatever. It's actually the underneath is really because you're looking for a boost of self esteem, self value, self worth. So, what I would say is really think about, when did I first start to value this thing in my life, whether it is more success or relationships or status or whatever it is. Think about why you value it and what caused you to value it. And this sometimes helps you to break it down a little bit. I had to go through this myself in my life. Several years ago, I started to get this idea that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to be a successful startup entrepreneur. And I struggled for many, many years to succeed in that environment. And inevitably, in the end, I actually didn't succeed and I failed. And I beat myself up for a long time and said, oh man, I was a failure and other people have succeeded and I don't measure up to them. Until one day I started to think, why do I value this? What is it about being an entrepreneur that's so valuable? And honestly, for me, I couldn't answer. I just fallen into this kind of way of thinking because the world and society and people I was hanging around made me think that I had to be this type of person. In reality, I don't, and you don't have to be anything either. And this is really important to think about, is why are you valuing something? Because the value is actually what creates the comparison, which makes you feel miserable about yourself. You don't actually have to value anything in your life the same as other people. Same as I was falling into the trap of valuing being an entrepreneur. As soon as I realized it wasn't for me and I didn't want to do it, I let it go and I felt great about myself. Now I work in an amazing career inside of a company and I feel good about myself. So this can be a trap as well, is what you value tends to create the feeling of negativity or like you're behind or you're a failure in life. Be careful that you're not valuing the wrong things and you're not seeking them out through social media and the internet and thinking you have to get to that level, because that becomes a big mistake. So these are the main ideas that I have for you today, my friends. As I said, this is a unique idea that I think I've had for many, many years, is that the internet can be a positive thing as long as you use it in the right way. There's an incredible amount of support and information and resources and empowerment out there and available to you. And hopefully what I'm creating here over the many years is something of value that you can use in some way. But for most of us, we also tend to fall into the dark side of it, where we over compare, we live in the human highlight reel, or we play these subtle status games, or we get overwhelmed by the options that are around us and we value the wrong things. So you have to be aware of these things and you have to really choose to live life on your own terms. That can take some time to do, and it really depends what you choose to value and who you really want to be. But the more clear you get on that, the easier it gets to live a fulfilling life and not just a life that's copying everybody else. So there we go, my friends. That is my little rant for today about how the internet and social media can make you feel like a failure, but it can also empower you if you measure things the right way. So I hope that's been somewhat insightful for you. These are reminders for me just as much as anybody else out there. And I look forward to being back again next year. I will probably be away next weekend. My wife and I are traveling to Pennsylvania to see her family, from California to Pennsylvania. So I will be away next Saturday over there in snowy, hopefully snowy Pennsylvania. But I wish every single one of you a wonderful Christmas, New Year's period. I'm going to aim to maybe do a couple of live sessions during the end of year vacation time. And I have some new shows and ideas coming up in the new year. So I'm very excited for what's coming up. I appreciate everybody who's been here on this channel and on Instagram watching these over the past couple of months. Doing these live streams this year has been an awesome experience. So more great things to come in 2024. I really appreciate you all. So I'll say farewell. So as I always say, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And most of all, thank you for improving yourself.